Senator Clarie Robling, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Senator, you have been a part of the Minnesota Senate now for 16 years, and much of that time was spent in the minority. You are now a key part of the majority, including your role as chair of the Finance Committee. We'll get into that in just a moment, but first I want to ask you, why step down now?
Well, last time I ran, I thought this is going to be my last term. And then when we came into the majority, and I was given a lot of key responsibilities and then later on a leadership role, I thought, well, maybe I should stay here and continue working for a while. But the thought that I was going to retire after 16 years kept hanging over me, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue. And then I got the perfect district, and I thought, oh, I love these people. I would love to continue to represent them. And so I announced that I was going to run again. But then I was getting ready for the endorsing convention, and I started pulling out some signs out of our barn, and they're covered with hay dust, of course, and looking at the big stack going, I'm going to have to clean these all up and put them all out. And then I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. And it isn't just the campaigning, but everything else that goes with it, the time away from your family, just the acrimony that we have here all the time. It's stressful, tiring, exhausting when we're in session, sometimes very exciting too, and sometimes very rewarding. But I'm just wearing down, and I thought it's time to let somebody else do it.
You are the first female chair of the powerful Senate Finance Committee. What were your expectations when you took the gavel, and kind of your feeling about it as well?
Well, coming into the majority last year with a $5.2 billion deficit was an overwhelming task, and it was a struggle. We worked very, very hard trying to get our funding into the resources that we had. So our spending into the resources that we had, and we simply didn't have enough resources because of the recession in order to fund everything that everybody wanted. So obviously we had to make some very difficult cuts, some very difficult decisions, and one of the best things that came out of it, of course, is we've taken that $5.2 billion deficit and turned it into almost $1 billion surplus. And so I'm proud of that work. I'm proud that we are where we are, and I can leave the state position and say we've accomplished something very significant here.
As far as being the first female chair, though, did you think that more eyes would be watching you a bit more closely, or was that not even a thought that had entered your head?
I didn't really think about that. I have always just moved into positions. I haven't thought I'm moving into them because I'm a female. I would expect people to review my work the same as they would anyone else's.
So to add to that then, how do you think you grew into the role from when you first took the gavel until now?
It was a little intimidating at first, and now I feel very comfortable. I thought about that the other day when I was sitting there chairing the committee when we had the stadium bill up, and I just feel very relaxed now. At first I was very attentive, rather nervous. Who do I call on next? The hands are being raised left and right. Witnesses are at the testifying table and trying to remember their names so you could call on them appropriately, trying to keep the committee on schedule. But now it's much more relaxed for me, and I love committee work. That has always been my favorite part of the legislature, is the committee work, where you really break down what's in the bills, where you really get an opportunity to talk to the experts and find out information. And I've always been the one asking lots of questions, and it's probably partly my journalism background, but I always had questions for the testifiers, and really trying to find out what this bill is going to do for the state of Minnesota. And that's what we're here to do. That's not the glamorous work, but it is the absolute necessary work for the legislature.
So, Senator, as you look back, what are you most proud of at this time?
Well, I'm proud of the relationships I've built and how that helps me in the work that I do. Because I truly believe that politics is a lot about relationships, and you cannot accomplish your goals if you can't get other people to work with you. And one of the things I fear about what I'm seeing here at the Capitol these days is that relationships are breaking down. And people are not getting along, and it shows in the lack of progress we make in our work. And I feel badly about that. I think we need to take more time, spend more time together, even on a social level perhaps, and not just a work level, because we have to trust each other more. There's a lack of trust.
So what would your advice be then to incoming legislators in that specifically related to trying to build those relationships and maintain relationships?
Well, don't hang around with just the people who think like you. You have to branch out. I was somewhat fortunate, and it was an unusual circumstances. When I came into the legislature after the 1996 election, I was the only new Republican, and there were 8 new Democrats. So I had no freshman class in my caucus. So I reached out to the other freshmen, and that was my first exposure. We had orientation. We spent a couple days together with that, and I got to be good friends with them. Right now, there's only 3 of us left from that class. It's Senator Higgins, Senator Uyghur, and myself. And Senator Higgins and I are both retiring now, so it's only Senator Uyghur that may be left. But I always had to reach out to get anything done as a member of the minority. So I worked on relationships. Even now with the governor, although I've gotten several bills vetoed, I've at least been able to go in there and talk to him about it, reaching out in a not highly confrontational way to try and bring some resolve to some of the issues that we've been working on. Unfortunately, they're not always successful. We have some major philosophical differences, but as a person, I can get along with him.
You brought up issues. Are there any big issues? Obviously, Racino is something that you have fought for a considerable amount of time. Besides Racino, or including Racino, are there some issues that you consider unfinished business as you step away?
Well, certainly Racino is one of the things that I wanted to see done for my district. The racetrack is an important industry in Scott County and throughout the state, actually, because there's feeder stables all around the state that raise horses to come to the track and race. And those are an important industry in our state. And the Canterbury is competing right now against other racetracks that have racinos and can pay much higher purses. And that's all these horsemen have to live off of, is the purses when they participate in the races. And so we're going to be losing more and more of the horses to other racetracks, and our breeding here in Minnesota is already declining. And I've talked to people who live in my area and elsewhere who typically breed horses for racing, and it's a 3-year process. And they're really hesitant. Some of them are not breeding. Maybe they used to breed 5 horses and now they're going to breed 2 because they don't know what the future is for racing in Minnesota. And it's disappointing to me that we could lose this industry. And last year when we hurt that industry with the shutdown, they were shut down even though they don't have state workers except for the Racing Commission, which oversees the races. And one of the hardest things I ever did was stand before about 1,100 of their employees, almost every one of them. They invited them to come for a rally, and they said, we'll have pop and hot dogs and bring your kids. And it was a beautiful summer day in July, of course, and they invited me to come to speak to them. And I could hardly talk. I got up in front of them, and I thought, I didn't run for office to do harm to people. And the shutdown was harming all these people who were without employment during that shutdown. And then I think of that now, and I think we could lose that industry, and all those people could permanently lose their jobs. And I don't want that to happen. So I have been an ardent supporter of Racino because I do believe that could save that industry.
Senator, I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak to your constituents now. What would you like to say to them?
Well, thank you for the honor of letting me represent you. Truly, it is an honor. It's something that most people in the state will never have the opportunity to do. And I hope I've served you well. I have worked hard, tried to keep my values and principles, and I truly respect my constituents, and I love the community that I live in, and I'm going to miss it in many ways, and in other ways, it is truly time to let someone else do the job.
Senator Clarie Robling, good luck to you in the future, and thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie.